It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. Well, today's guest is Charlie Birch. Charlie has a strong belief that entrepreneurship has the power and responsibility to leave a positive and lasting impact on the world. She had spent years as a freelancer before starting to build her present company, Third Eye Web Strategies. What really is interesting about Charlie, she's done consulting, she's done web development and so many levels, and she also gets involved in other things. And one of her projects is a mission to support local businesses. And I'm actually looking forward to looking at this with Charlie. When COVID hit, Charlie knew she needed to increase her impact and begin to wonder, how can I help more people faster? How many people actually thought about that during COVID? Now you know why Charlie is a guest here today in Her Success Story. Thanks for joining me, Charlie.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's take a step back and start at the beginning a little bit. Share with me how you started from freelancing to saying, okay, Third Eye Web, I'm going to actually start owning a business, because there's not necessarily the same mindset of owning a business and freelancing. So give me a little bit of background there.
Sure. I mean, I would say, kind of to flip it, flip it on its head. I actually started thinking I would be a counselor and work with mental health. And then I realized that there was a lot of rigidity in that industry in terms of I had to get a counseling license in a specific state. And then I had to, operate in this very specific way. And there's nothing wrong with ethics. I'm a big fan of ethics, but just the way the industry was set up felt a little bit oppressive to me. So I started to explore the idea of becoming a coach and start a business as a coach. And if anyone's ever started a business, you know that it takes a lot of time and energy and money to get it off the ground. And so I actually fell into the freelance space while I was trying to start my business, in order to keep the flexibility and control over my schedule that I needed, and also have money to pay my bills while I was getting my business off the ground.
We've all done, I have to just jump in here because, so many of us have done that, myself included. I stayed running my printing company as I started building Slater Success in the early years, cash flow, and there's trial and error. When you start a business, is that throw spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks, to really, kind of niche it down and develop, how you're going to build this business. So I love that, that you're sharing that. Thanks.
Yeah. And
so you started freelancing here.
Yes, I started freelancing. And what I realized in doing that is two things. One, I liked engaging with the work I was doing as a freelancer a lot more than I liked the work of being a coach. I'm a doer. I like to do things. And I appreciate the coaching field, and I leverage it in my own life. But it can be kind of amorphous. And I like to do work that has a clear structure and a start point and an end point, for a lot of reasons, which takes me to the other thing I realized about freelancing is that while it gives you a lot of control over your schedule, when you're a freelancer, you're often coming in and filling a job description that has a predetermined pay rate and a predetermined scope of work. And that didn't really work for me in terms of lifestyle design, because I want to think about, okay, how much do I want to work? What type of work do I want to do? How much do I need to make to ensure that I enjoy that work instead of resent that work, and then reverse engineer my pricing. And to have that ability, I have to be a business eye. I can't be somebody that's just coming in and plugging a need that's already been defined.
So third eye, right?
Yes.
Third Eye Web Strategies, when we look at that, how have you built this company that now fit the vision of what you wanted? because you were very clear in your life design as we've gotten to know each other. You're like, you had a vision for your life. And you just kind of just kept tweaking things until you found a working business model that fit that. So how does Third Eye fit in there?
Well, I was very much a remote worker way before that was an it thing, right? I've been working remotely for 10 years. I've had a Zoom account for 10 years. And what I realized, and I was just journaling about this last night, actually, so it's interesting that you bring it up. What I realized about remote work and kind of the fantasy of being a digital nomad, like I did the digital nomad thing, and it's really lonely. And it's hard to build a community. And I'm sure you can agree that the best business comes from having a well-nurtured community, right? Like the best business always comes from referrals and people who know, like, and trust you. And it's really hard to create momentum like that when you're constantly changing your region and your location. And so professionally, it was kind of lonely, and personally, it was kind of lonely. And so I looked at, when I moved back to New Jersey with my husband, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago now, I knew that I wanted to plug into this community and serve this community. I didn't want to be limited by that, but I knew that I wanted to plug in. So I looked around and I thought, okay, who are the people in this community that have needs that I can serve? And what are the types of people and businesses that I want to serve, right? And so I want to live in a world where there's things to do on the weekend. I want to live in a world where there's a place to go for happy hour at the end of the day. And I think that that's part of what drew me to the local business community as a whole, because there's a lot of conversation about e-commerce and online business being the future. And there's a lot of benefits to that, but there's also a shadow side to that if we don't invest in the places where we live and the people that we share community with, I don't want to live. I don't know. Do you want to live in a world where there's nothing to do on the weekend, or, you know what I mean? So these are the businesses that need that support.
Yeah, no, I think there's an important piece of information here, an important conversation to be had, because like, I know, I live in New York City, and people are like, oh, you know, the city, like, do you know your neighbors? Do you know? I'm not going to tell you I know every neighbor, but when we talk about the places around, right? So our dry cleaner. Yeah, you know, listeners, for those of you who have been a follower of her success story for a while, I might have shared this story before, but my dry cleaner, you know, I call them, you know, this is New York City, they come and pick up and they deliver, which is lovely. But I will call and say, you know, and he picks up the phone because I have been to his shop for years, and I've been a customer for him. And he immediately, when a new customer comes in, he puts it into his database, this, that, and the other thing. So when my number calls to pick up, he goes, "Good morning, Ivy. How are you this, you know, Monday morning? Yes. What do you need? How can I help you?" And I'm like, "Oh, Josh, you know, I'm heading out on a business trip," or, "Oh, we having a thing and I need something taken care of, or my husband needs this." He goes, "Absolutely, I have one of my guys." And he might send, you know, a little note in joy, or he'll not call me up and say, "I just want to let you know it's on the way back." You know, people think of that as a small town thing, which is true and important, but business and where you live, the community that's formed, is vital. And you know, hats off to you for looking at the COVID experience and the pandemic experience and looking at it as a way of connecting.
Yes. And I mean, I think that's at the heart of my philosophy, is that technology is only as good as the connections we use it to build. Right? I mean, I don't want to live in a world that's just transactional. I want to live in a world that's experiential. And if we can use technology to showcase the experiences that live in any community, large or small, versus just using technology as a credit card processing machine, that's what I'm about. And I think that it's really hard for small business owners. I mean, most people in the small business space start a business because they're passionate about what they do and they learn the business side as they go. And a lot of that audience is also bootstrapping. They're not, leveraging a large amount of venture capital, right? Like they don't have big investors. And if they do have investors, they're probably, family and friends type of investors. And so it's difficult often for these mom and pop businesses that are the fabric of our society. They're not, the bank of the society, but they're the fabric of the society. And it's difficult for them to access the resources that they need to really promote themselves in a modern way, because a lot of web design agencies and firms don't want to work with business owners that have such small marketing budgets. And there's so much information. I mean, we're in the age of misinformation, of diluted information, of, information is everywhere. But how do you do the quality control? How do you research something well to DIY something well when you don't know, diddly about it? So another big piece of my philosophy is that my role as a website professional, as a marketing professional in this niche of the local Main Street businesses, is education first. I want to make sure that if a customer or a client is coming to work with me, that they leave not only with a better web presence, but a better understanding of what that means to own and manage and leverage in their business. And so education is a huge part of what I do, to make sure that these people are empowered to DIY better or make better hiring decisions. Because there's I just hear so many horror stories of people getting ripped off because they don't, and not like to say that the people on the other end of that exchange were malintentioned, but it's hard to hire somebody to do something for you in your business when you don't really understand the job that needs to be done.
Right. And, that has something to be said about, when we stay in our sweet spot and hire out everything else, yet when you hire out, you have to trust the people you're hiring, right? You want to review their work. You want to get references. You want to speak to those references.
Yes.
And many people miss that step. They look on a website and like, this is good work, I'm ready to go. But I've always taken it a step further personally for myself, because I like to speak to other customers to see what not just the work is, but the experience is. I've spent 20 some odd years, with a high expectation of customer experience.
Mm-hmm. It's all about
one thing I admire you that you say, I have to kind of go here for a sec. You have said that I intend Third Eye to be the first stop shop where Main Street leaders who want to convert more web traffic into foot traffic can access legitimate web strategy advice and services backed by research delivered in plain English. Thank you very much. And customized to meet their unique needs. I think that says so much of bringing small community and all community together.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point of working in your area of expertise, I know that, one, I don't want to run an agency. Like, that's not my area of expertise. I'm not interested in running a giant agency. I'm not interested in having, anonymous customers who don't know me and I don't know my customers. I want that personal relationship, just like my customers who opened a physically located business for a reason. They want to know their customers, just like your dry cleaner wants to know you, right? And so I know that about myself. And I also know that I am a creative, first and foremost. As you have a background in dance, I have a background in dance. I'm a creative, and I was drawn to this website work because it's a creative modality. And a lot of my dance background actually applies. It's all just theme and variation, marketing your business, branding your business. It's all just theme and variation. But I know that, when it comes to the more digital marketing side of things, paid advertising campaigns, drip email campaigns, that is so not my bag. And so I said, how can I build a business that allows me to interact with this community in a way that, one, lets me just do what I'm really good at, which is taking what they have, looking at it and saying, here's the outside perspective, and here's the best practices that aren't being followed. Here's a scope of work. And this is my audit service that I have. I look at a website and it's across 31 best practices. And I say, look, if this was my website and I was in charge of it, this is what I would do differently. And here's some services that I offer that can help you fix X, Y, and Z. But then here are my list of preferred vendors for A, B, and D, because I don't do that. And so it's almost like a matchmaking service, right? It's almost like a professional website matchmaking service where I say, this is what you have happening. This is what's working for you, your strengths and weaknesses, and I can fill these needs. And here's the people who can fill the other needs, because I'm a huge, huge believer in collaboration. And I think that there is a place for everybody in the marketplace, as long as we know our strengths and we stand in an abundance mentality.
I cannot agree with you more. I'm a strong believer in collaboration. I think, from the backgrounds of dance, the greatest ways to choreograph something is you have a vision and then you take people into a room and you start creating that vision together.
Yes.
And, we as young dancers learn that lesson very young. And, I love how you explain that. Let me ask you this. Out of these years of building a business, getting involved in other investment opportunities and things like that, that you run and do as a family, that you have other things that you're managing, becoming a mom, everything that's on your plate. And as you've been building Third Eye, what has surprised you?
What surprises me is, what surprises me is that when I think I'm doing something new, all of a sudden realize, oh, this is just actually bringing me more in touch with my roots, right? And also what I was just journaling about last night, I spent a lot of years, I didn't identify with the place where I grew up. It was very sports oriented. I was an artist, my family moved there when I was in 4th grade, and it was very locals oriented. So it was hard for me to integrate into the community. And I was always kind of an outsider. And I spent a lot of years running away from what didn't work for me towards things I thought would work. And I often have to do things wrong for myself in order to figure out what's right for myself. And as I was running and trying to be this digital nomad and trying to have this flexible lifestyle, I found my husband, who is a very domestic person. He's super domestic. And he was like, let's just be domestic. And that surprised me. But when we moved back here, it was a really nice opportunity for me to have a reparative experience with where I come from, where I have a lot of wounding around not fitting in. And it was a challenge for me to say, okay, I'm going to stop running away from what doesn't work towards something else that might not work. And instead, I'm going to ask for what I want, plant my roots, and grow something that will work for me and be an influential figure in my community and make the community what I want it to be. Because you always take your baggage with you. Like everywhere I run to, I just bring my own stuff with me. And until you decide to change your way of being, you're never going to change your experience.
That's fair. And I think that's very true. Change comes from within, not from the outside.
Yes. And I think also with transformation, with personal growth, it's really important for me, at least, to remember to approach that from a place of good enoughness, right? Like if you are approaching self-care or personal growth or goals from a place of feeling broken, everything that you do is still going to not feel good enough or feel broken. If you can say, okay, I love myself unconditionally, who I am right now, everything that grows from that will just be extra. Right. So I think that's been, but to your question, what surprises me the most is how transferable everything I've done before really is, and how coming into the best version of myself really is a circular process of returning to those foundational parts of myself.
I think that's fair. Charlie, share with our audience how they could follow you, how they can reach out and get in touch.
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn as Charlie Birch, and then we have a company page, Third Eye Web Strategies, on LinkedIn. That's the platform I'm putting the most time and energy into. So if you want to follow me and actually like engage with me, that's probably the best place to go. I am on Instagram, but Charlie Birch, Third Eye Web Strategies. Our website is thirdeyewebstrategies.com. And we are also over on Clubhouse. Matthew, who introduced us, Matthew and I are over on Clubhouse twice a week doing live networking on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 in the small SMB think tank, which is a small and medium-sized business think tank in Connectors Corner. So if you want some real-time conversation and interaction, that's a great place to find me. That's in Eastern time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2.
Fabulous. Charlie, thank you for joining us here today on Her Success Story.
Thank you so much.
Listeners, what I will say to you now that you've listened to Charlie's insight, her journey, and everything we have learned from her today about small business and how the interaction in the community, take a moment and think about, what are you taking away personally from this? What piece of this interview actually hit you, connected with you? Make a note of it in the comments below, and then take that one step further. What action are you going to take about that? Takeaways are wonderful. If we're showing up to listen, we want to understand what's that one thing we're taking away from it, and then tie it to the action that is actually where success sits. So thank you for joining us here today. Feel free to hit subscribe, and we'll be in your inbox and your every podcast app you can imagine every Monday morning. See you next time.